Hello and welcome back, and today we're continuing our look at the DSM-7 beta. This is the first part in a 4-part series of videos where we are going to look at the improvements that have been made in the beta of DSM-7 and of course how it compares in later videos against that of DSM 6.2. So in this 4-part series of videos, today's one for example, we are going to be looking at storage management and the user interface. Then we've got a whole one on the analytical side of things that takes advantage of looking at tools like Active Insight and a few of the other new add-ons that are happening with the Synology DSM platform. Then we've got another one dedicated to photography with the Synology Photos application, and then of course that big one at the end where we are going to compare all of the features that have been upgraded in DSM-7 against that of DSM 6.2. But those are different videos coming soon. Let's focus on today's video. Now, I've got two NASes here in my own environment that have got DSM-7 beta on them. I've got a DS220 Plus and a DS1019 Plus, so an older gen and a newer gen. Now the reason I am using these two NASes is at the moment is I'm building one of them, a huge photo collection that I'm going to be utilising in our Synology Photos video, where we're going to look at the shared spaces, we're going to look at the AI recognition, and we're going to look at a number of the flexible sharing options built into it. But the predominant amount of this video, the bulk of it, is going to be on this 1019 Plus. And the very first thing I want to show you is that secure logging using the Synology sign in secure or secure sign in application. I've got my mobile phone here with me, so if I go ahead and log into this device here, it's then going to request that I use the sign in application on my phone. I can choose to stay signed in once we go for it. So on my phone it's now saying that the request is being made on the DS1019 Plus. I go ahead and click approve. I then have to enter my phone's login key password or key pattern, and as you can see I'm now logged into the NAS. Now you don't have to just use that system of login. You can use the additional passwords or we can use both, and they can all be edited quite quickly here on the personal tab. Go there. I think I've done the wrong one there. We need to go into, let's have a look, have I done the right one? Scroll down even, there you go, and you can go ahead and disable or enable a number of those services quite easily. So if we go ahead, and what I'll do is I'm going to turn off, go ahead there, and what we're going to do is turn off passwordless sign in, go ahead, sign out of our device, and at the same time I'm also going to sign out of another NAS that I've got here in the background, not shut down. We're going to go for a sign, I'm going to log out. And from this device we're going to go ahead and we're going to log in again, and we just want to see how fast it logs us in. So we'll click the button there, we'll count from there, and we're logging in now. If we go for this NAS here, we do exactly the same thing and we log in. As we can see, very similar indeed, but I'm still going to give the slight edge to DSM-7 there. Now, if we have a look, this is our new interface, and again I will do a full video where I compare a number of these. There's a lot of building work happening on this other NAS with a VM deployment we're getting ready for. But looking at the DSM-7 NAS here, we can get a bit more information about the new UI. It's a lot cleaner, it's a lot sharper, it feels very localized, has to be said. A lot of those options we were looking at that tab earlier on tells us lots of information about the background of this, if we want to enable two-step, passwordless, or a combination of all of them. Display preferences, I mean we can change the layout of things, and with the linking to our accounts we can also change a lot of the internet accessible elements of this NAS quite quickly in the security settings, and a lot of them will be present here on these tabs. So if we go into the options here at the top, some apps already arrived pre-installed, but we've installed a bunch of them already from the package center in this beta. All applications are in the beta packages tab. It's worth highlighting, of course, that there are a number of applications that cannot be used in this current version of the beta. Things like Plex Media Server, which have not been adapted to DSM-7, mean that they are not going to be usable in this current version of DSM. It's you see there, some of the images there taking a little longer to load up there, and again, blame my screen recording software. As always, we are using the OBS software, and that does always have a slight impact on things graphically while we're utilizing it. It's quite a hungry beast of an application. So going back into that application center, the majority of the core applications are still there, and most of them are exactly the same as you remember them right now. They've just been updated to that of DSM 7 compatibility. And indeed, installing an application is just as easy as ever, although you may notice that some applications are, of course, missing. The likes of Synology Synology Photo Station and Synology Moments are gone in favour of course, Synology Photos, an application we are going to talk about in a great deal more length in a future video coming soon. It's a combination of those two apps, of Photo Station and Synology Moments, and the utility of both and the ease of both, all of them in that one user interface there. So if we carry on, that's how we go about installing packages. Not much change there, but of course one of the biggest changes is in that storage manager. If we go into the storage manager there, and this is going to be part 1 of 3 bits where we talk about the storage management, we can have a look at this NAS and its new UI there for the storage manager. And again, I know I said there's a full comparison later, but just a quick glance, this is how much has changed between these two UIs. This is the old one here with the tabs on the side, overview, volume, storage pool, individual hard drives, hot spare, SSD cache, and it's a lot more textual, I've got to say, whereas in the newer version of DSM it's gone far more graphical overall. Gives us information. We can go into each of those drives directly if we choose. Go back to that overview there. Of course, we've also got the access to the cache. I'm only using one SSD in the cache today because I've got them being utilized in other systems at the time of recording, but we have enabled a hot spare there that is supporting the other system. And one of the things we will be testing very soon in the next few days is RAID recovery. There was a big game spoken by Synology on their launch day where they talked about the likes of RAID 6 degraded performance and the rebuild times. We're going to look at some of those settings in just a moment, but if we go there, after we go to the overview of all the lovely little graphics and stuff, and we can choose if we want to see the hot spare and the cache being demonstrated there in that graphics. If we go into the storage option there, a lot of these options are familiar, but they're just presented in a far clearer fashion. At the moment, we're still optimizing the RAID configuration and SHR that we're building there in the background. So until that's done, we are going to be leaving that there in preparation for our RAID drive pull. And of course down here we've also got details on their SSD caching as well, how much is being utilized, and of course a lot of these things can be examined in closer detail later on. So if we go into the individual settings, you can obviously create things quite easily, everything from the SSD cache to the volume and the storage pool. And during the original setup of this device, it does hold your hand a lot throughout the whole process. So if you're feeling slightly intimidated by this, if anything, it's even better than it was before in terms of RAID building there. There's lots of config options added now in the background for kind of improving the performance as well of your storage inside this system. If you have a look, I mean, RAID scrubbing is not a new thing, it has to be said, and being able to do those things is quite straightforward. But I do like these new options of fast repair, and of course, once again, faster RAID resyncs is something that existed before, but the fast repair is not something we've seen before, and it does allow a shortened amount of time for the system to be out of commission, or at least in the state of degradation while it's being built. And again, if you do have that additional drive in place, it will make all the difference. If you go into the hot spare there, that's our hot spare drive we've created. We can go in to find out whether we want it to auto replace in the event of a failure, as you'd expect from a hot spare. And of course, if you have other drives as well, you can assign different drives to different storage pools as you need. It's very straightforward, and again, very easy to follow. SSD Cache Advisor now has an analysis tool that will analyze the utility of drives inside your NAS system over a period of time, and it will be able to do a much better job of intelligent caching there in the background. Of course, it isn't just going to be analysed, it will still be accessed and usable by your core storage system. And although I don't really have much in the way of criticism for the improvements in the storage manager, I've got to say I do kind of miss that nice little cache tool when you would have a cache and it was that like just showing you the hit rate in a graphical fashion. I'm surprised they don't have that in this newest version of DSM. Now, individual drives, we can find out lots of information if we go to the individual drive there that we've got, that SSD. We can go into the health information, and we can even perform some tests on that drive as well in the background. Not even just traditional smart, we can run benchmarks on those SSDs, which is always welcome to find out more information about IOPS, throughput, latency, and ultimately how they're going to perform. Now, let's see if we can have that information here on the hard drive side, and it does look like we can now get those performance benchmarks there on the individual drives as well. And again, that was present before, but what I would add is it would have been nice to have seen a performance benchmark for RAID pools in the background. I've still yet to see that, and I think it's a tool that demonstrating what these NASes can do would be very, very helpful. And of course, you can check the information with regards to that hot spare in exactly the same way. Now, if we go for the caching there, so let's go back to it. We'll go to the actions, and we can configure the write caching if we choose. If we had a read-write cache, there are other options available where we can look into a number of the BTRFS benefits of the caching in the background. There's a lot happening with that, with the metadata pinning, and something we will talk about during the RAID resync and RAID rebuild videos. And again, all the scheduled settings that we had before, they've just been presented in a nicer fashion. Now, the health report, it's something we've kind of seen before. It's quite limited. Not much has improved from what I can see, but I do quite like the drive database here. This idea that there is an ongoing database of drive health parameters to stay on top of for the system to learn what to watch out for on a drive suffering difficulties, and therefore triggering that hot spare as needed. It's all built in there, and it's all nice and slick and very responsive. So we'll come out of there, and we're going to talk a little bit, not much though, about SAN Manager. Now, this did exist prior to this point. It has always existed for the most part as standard iSCSI Manager. For those that aren't aware, you would create a LUN nice and easily here. LUN is very straightforward to create. It's an area of storage far more usable than that of a mapped network drive as far as third-party tools allow. If you're running a Windows system, you simply need to make sure you run the iSCSI initiator. And again, just look up the word iSCSI initiator here. Very straightforward, and that is how you can enable a nice, easy find of a targeted drive working with iSCSI. But now, because of the inclusion of Fibre Channel, and unfortunately because I do not have a Fibre Channel card here in the studio, I can't show you, there should be an option right here for Fibre Channel access. So if we go ahead and create a new LUN, just to show you what I mean, let's go ahead and make this a 100 gig target LUN. Go ahead there, we can choose the provisioning as we need, and we can scale that storage as needed as well. But for now, let's keep it at thick, just to make sure that performance is nice and high for later. As you can see, because there's no Fibre Channel HBA adapter inside this system, I unfortunately can't go much further than that, showing you that. But we're going to go ahead and go with the traditional target there. And again, we can customize this a little bit if you want. If you want to start adding some of the chaps and stuff like that in terms of security, they can all be done there. And again, it's very straightforward. And if anything, it is just as clear as it has always been in the Storage Manager. Now, the Storage Manager has a few extra options built into it, which once we've got the read-write cache and that full RAID configuration is done, I'll be able to show you during the RAID rebuild testing. That said, one thing we did talk a little bit about ever since DSM was first revealed, and something that I think not a lot of people will appreciate, but I think when you do need it, it's good to know it's there, is the idea of SSD cache removal and customization while it's still in use. Now, a number of us that want to upgrade our SSDs, maybe you owned a 918 at the beginning and your SSD has been pounded by caching, or you are someone that's been utilizing SSDs and you're looking to increase the size of those for caching or change from a read-only to a read-write cache. Generally, in older generations, when you moved the SSD cache or customized it, it would disable your storage pool. And if you had lots of shares and lots of stuff going on, they would all be disconnected. Well, I'm pleased to confirm that if you do remove SSDs from the cache, so if we go ahead, we're going to remove the SSD pool from the pool, we're going to log with our information, and we're going to remove that caching there, we're able to see that we can still access that storage pool. So if we go ahead, not storage pool, the volume even, we can go ahead and just carry on accessing it whilst it moves that in the background. We can go ahead, open up any image. We're going to open them up in the background nice and easy. Now, I know that doesn't seem like much, but honestly, that is a big deal to be able to do that on Synology's DSM right now, particularly for your people that utilize an ever-changing storage environment. Now, if we want to add the SSD, there's two ways we can do it. We can use that cache advisor that will analyze your storage, or you can go ahead and just create it right here. So if we create the area of cache, now we need 2 SSDs if we want to take advantage of a number of the benefits of the improvements of caching in DSM. We will cover that. But for now, we're going to go with read-only caching because we've only got the one SSD there to take advantage of it, which is going to be a basic because we've only got the one SSD. We go ahead, select the drive, click Next, say the size that we want to utilize for this task, and go ahead, and it will erase the contents of that SSD if it does everything on it, and it will go ahead and equip that cache nice and quickly. The next thing for us to talk about is, of course, hybrid share. That is the ability to have that mixture of cloud and physical-based storage environments working together, bestowing their individual benefits to the core system. So it will already be installed, the hybrid share service. Go ahead into the package center and open. And we go ahead and it will open up the shared folder and the hybrid share option. And now it needs to connect a C2 storage account via the internet and your Synology account with that of your system. So if you click Start, it will open up the Synology C2 portal there. You will have to log in, something I've already done here. And once you do that, it will offer you the ability to sign up for the hybrid share beta trial. So we go ahead, I'm going to go with it. I've got some storage there. Let's go ahead. Next, we can enter an encryption key that we need to do there. So I'm going to go ahead and enter a key on screen. The key has now been entered. I can go ahead and start entering the information here. So let's go ahead and just call this one DSM 7.10.19 share. Give it a description. Again, this is going to be like a shared folder, but this is going to be synchronized with that C2 platform. We're going to give it 500 gig, and of course that will be represented by that cache there in the background as well. Go ahead, I'm going to give it a recycle bin. Why not? We're going to go for it there. Click Next. Double check we've got all of the options there, and it will restrict the access as you see fit, but if you disable that, you can make sure that everyone or only specific people can retrieve files as needed. So we can go ahead, click Done, and now we are creating our hybrid share with the Synology C2 account there. And we can take a little bit of a look at some of those configuration options as well. It's also worth highlighting that the data inside this hybrid shared drive can be accessed in a number of ways. Not only is it readily accessible here on Synology's own file station UI here, while we transfer data to it in the background, but also it can be accessed via the C2 cloud with the hybrid drive that you've connected. Now, as you see, I've already created hybrid shares with other devices, and if we go into the DS220 Plus, you can see I have already created a hybrid share on this one too. If we go into the settings, go into the shared folders, you'll see that we have already created that share as well on there. In fact, you can even access it on the mobile app. We can see that even on here, that shared drive is still readily accessible with the data being cached there in the background. And if you do take advantage of the client application that you can install on your Windows, PC or Linux platforms, you can access all of that data that lives on the hybrid shared drive and download it as you see fit. You can even go one step further with all of this cached data between the platforms and link this with Synology Drive. And with Synology Drive, you have also got the versioning built in as well, with Synology Drive supporting, I think, up to 32 versions of files that are kept within the Synology Drive storage. It means that if you do make edits and changes, not only have you got the recycle bin built into that shared drive on the C2 cloud working with the NAS via the internet, but you can also revert to previous versions if you make the hybrid share used as a drive folder. Lots of stuff that can be done there with that in the background. The last few things I want to look at in today's video go back to that idea of presentation. I want to look at some of the things that have really stood out for me between not only the early version of DSM-7 that we looked at previously, but these newer and updated versions now in the public beta. For example, the resource monitor now seems a lot cleaner and a lot clearer, as we can see here with a lot of that on screen. It is very comparable to that of the original one. It's quite similar, but I feel it's just that little bit more responsive and that information a little bit more readily available. There's a few extra settings as well where you can maintain the history, something we were looking for before, rather than as soon as we open it. But on top of that, there's also the help and guides. We talked about those before with DSM help. This was touched on before, and I think they've really revamped and improved a lot of the help features and functionality. A lot of these are very tailored to your own unique system. So for example, if you want to check one of these tabs out immediately, stay ahead of problems, it does let you know straight away about how to set up, and it will walk you through how to add certain services and add-ons very quickly. Same goes with localized and remote access, and of course some of the other differences there in the background with regards to setting up some of those security protocols on the device. Everything from Synology's own security counseling apps, and of course that two-stage login information we talked about before. Lots of information to do with all the client apps as well. They've really made it a lot more chewable and easier, more user-friendly to set this device up for the first time, particularly if you're a newbie there in the background that's new to the world of NAS and are just looking for something that you can set up and forget. Another neat little improvement there on the resource monitor is the ability to kill connections to existing files. If you go to the Access Files tab, it will go ahead and check through connected users, but not just the active users and their IP. It will also show the files that they are accessing. And for those of you that need to lock files or to make sure that a file that can only be set to read only by some other users, this is a nice way to on the fly change access parameters to given files, such as editing files. And there in the background, as you can see, some of these files are being accessed by different devices simultaneously. A lot of that to do with that hybrid share. And then what we can do is kill that connection if we choose to make sure it's not being accessed all the time. But you do have to make sure you're using the right protocol in order to take advantage. Another neat little upgrade to the Users tab on this device is also to do with the delegation of administration roles. Now, for those of you that are aware, when you do set up a NAS for the first time, you can create multiple users. And this is good for team members that have got access to certain folders, access to certain apps, and ultimately, so you can create a more cohesive, collaborative environment without giving people too much control, or at the very least, not be able to change things that you really don't want them to do. But what you can do now is you can actually assign delegation. Say, for example, we've got the admin here that's got all the power in the world, and they've got me there. Well, with the temp guy here, I've created an individual called temp, and if I go to delegation, I can actually delegate them as an administrator, and this can be changed by the overall admin. I can even change the preset roles and preset abilities they have as we go along. So, for example, I can change the groups. They've already got full administrative position, unfortunately. But if we do change this user's group, edit them and move them into a less aggressive role, so we're going to move them out of the admin role there. So say we wanted to give this individual temporary full administrative control. Once this page refreshes, we go in, we select the user, we go to delegate, we go to delegate administration, and now we can say exactly what we want that user to be able to do. We can say what things they can change, what they can manage, and then all of this is managed by real admins. This user will not be able to change their own rules. So it's a nice way to be able to give temporary administrative purposes to individual users without worrying too much about the long-term damage it might do. And there you have it. Those are just a few of the ways in which the storage and UI have been improved in DSM-7. There's lots of focus there on keeping things nice and simple, while at the same time creating this wonderful shared multi-tier system of access. Whether you're accessing it locally on a remote device using the internet, or you are accessing the device directly inside, overseeing the whole system. And remember, we've still got our video still to come on that great little little tool, Active Insight, and of course Synology Photos, and I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about just how DSM-7 compares with DSM 6.2. But I'm going to wrap things up there. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next part in this series. I look forward to showing it to you, and visit the links in the description to both NAS Compares and span.com. I will see you next time.